I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item on the agenda will be the moment of silence led by the board vice president.
As we begin this meeting, let us pause for a 60-second moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or engage in any other silent activity. Time.
The next item on the agenda will be our Pledge of Allegiance, be led by Senior Robert Stumbo.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Robert. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Robert Stumbo. I'm a senior at Broken Arrow High School, and I'm part of the Tiger Strike Robotics team. We're 60-26. This is our second year of being a team. I've been in Broken Arrow School since I was in kindergarten. My little brother's in Broken Arrow schools. I just go to school and try and have a good time with my friends and get good enough grades to have a future.
So Robert, speaking about the future, what are your plans after you graduate?
I hope to go to TCC and just get my basics done and then apply at a state college and hopefully become a teacher one day.
Wow. All
Okay,
right.
that just made my heart melt. And I have to mention that that's one of the wonderful things about being Broken Arrow and being in Tulsa County is that partnership that we have with TCC, because it provides the opportunity for our students to go on and take their classes and get their basics pretty close to free, correct? And that doesn't happen in many places in the nation, so what a wonderful opportunity, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I think we'll take a picture here, Robert.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, next item will be the adoption of the agenda, but before we move forward, it's been noted we need to move items 39 and 50 from the consent agenda, as those items were not received in time for the meeting.
I move to formally adopt the agenda with the exception of items 39 and 50.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item will be the minutes from the March 6th meeting. Do we have a discussion?
Move the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item will be the March 31st special board meeting minutes. Any discussion? Take a motion.
I move the special board meeting minutes of March the 31st, 2017.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Abstain.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
and Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item will be summary of awards and achievements. Will be Ms. Burns.
President Allen, members of the board, Dr. Dunlop, it's my great pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of Broken Arrow High School to recognize, first of all, our National Merit finalists. Each year, our juniors take the PSAT. That stands for pre-SAT. But sometimes they forget about the other letters that are a part of that test. Sometimes we call it the PSAT numsquat because the other letters are NMSQT, and it stands for National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. Those students who score highest in the nation are named National Merit semifinalists, and this year, earlier in the year, you recognized our 3 National Merit semifinalists. They move on in a very competitive process to see if they can qualify to be National Merit finalists. Only about 1% of students in the United States qualify to be National Merit finalists. It is statistically more difficult than being named to an Ivy League school. So there are fewer students who qualify for this than make up the entering freshmen in the Ivy League. So I'm very proud to tell you that all 3 of our National Merit semifinalists are National Merit finalists, and I believe 2 were able to be with us this evening. And so at this time, if they'll come forward, we'll introduce you to them and let you hear a little bit about their future plans. Well, we may only have 1 this evening. Yeah, we have 2 young ladies who are members of our National Merit finalists, and they are Maya Cruz and Madeline Pratt. And then the 3rd member of our group is Jacob Taylor, and I'll ask him to tell you a little bit about his plans.
Hi, I'm Jacob Taylor, and I plan to go to Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas. I want to major in biomedical engineering, and I'm not sure yet if I want to do graduate school or go into the field and work. But I'd just like to thank all the teachers and administrators who have helped me to get to where I am.
Believe me, your teachers and administrators would like to thank you too, Jacob. We would never have a problem in the world if all of our students had the kind of just drive and determination and desire to be the best that Jacob has. And that has also been evidenced by the Oklahoma Foundation for Excellence recognizing Jacob as Broken Arrow High School's academic all-state recipient this year. So it's my great pleasure to present you with a certificate on behalf of the Oklahoma Foundation for Excellence.
And Ms. Burns, just to add one last honor, I had the great pleasure this last Friday evening to award Jacob the 1st annual AP Scholar Superintendent's Award for the year, and he was a recipient of that as well. So, an amazing young man, and we look forward to watching your future because I know that you're going to do amazing things and make us so proud. So, thank you.
Yeah. Let's do the whole board up there with Jacob. Jacob's a big guy. He's a big deal.
Jacob is one of the most humble students you will ever meet, too, and you might be interested in knowing that he also is first in the graduating class at Broken Arrow High School with a GPA that exceeds 5.2. So, you know, I don't know what you did. You must have taken some blow-off class in there, Jacob, to not get any higher than that. But anyway.
Ms. Burns,
Great job.
what you're telling us is Jacob's pretty much a big deal, isn't he?
I think he could do my job, yes. And probably everybody else's.
Okay, next item will be item number 8. Ms. Burns.
You know, not only are our students great scholars, but they are also people who are concerned about the community, who many of them give hours and hours of community service each year. One award that we are very grateful to partner with is called the Prudential Spirit of Community Award, and it awards those students who have given the most time in community service within our community, within our state, and in the case of this next young lady, even within the nation. And so here to make that presentation this evening is a representative from Prudential, Ms. Lori Hayworth.
Hello. I am Lori Haworth, and it is with great pleasure to be here today to honor a very special young woman. My company, Prudential Financial, in partnerships with the National Association of Secondary School Principals, sponsors a national awards program to honor middle level and high school students for outstanding volunteer services. All over the United States, young people are using their creativity and compassion to improve their own communities and the communities of others. We hope that by identifying and honoring these young volunteers and holding them up as role models, others will be inspired to volunteer too. Thousands of young people across the country were considered for the 2017 Prudential Spirit of Community Awards. From all of these, a select few in each state and the District of Columbia have been selected for special recognition. Here in Oklahoma, I am delighted to report that one of our distinguished finalists in this year's program is your own Olivia Woodridge. Olivia, will you please come forward? Olivia is a youth ambassador for the Tourette Association of America and the creator of Creating Awareness for Tourette Syndrome, a nonprofit she started to educate the public about a widely misunderstood disorder. Olivia, to honor your accomplishments, I would like to present you with an engraved Prudential Spirit of Community bronze medallion in recognition of your outstanding community service. I'm going to warn you, it's a little heavy over here. They weren't kidding around. Olivia, on behalf of everyone involved in the Prudential Spirit of Community Awards, congratulations on a well-deserved honor.
We also have a certificate to award to Olivia. Again, with students like Jacob, our other National Merit finalists, and Olivia at our school, as well as the students that you'll meet in a moment from our robotics club. I mean, we have an embarrassment of riches at Broken Arrow High School. Makes me very, very proud to serve as the principal there with students like these. Thank you, Olivia. Do we want to get a photograph
We
as
do,
well?
and I'd just like to say, Olivia, you know, each one of our students sort of has a different area of giftedness, but especially dear to our heart are students who already recognize how important it is to give back to community and especially help those who sometimes can't help themselves. And so we want to honor you. It's something else to find someone of your age that recognizes that so early, and not only just recognizes it, but does something to change the world. So congratulations.
Great job. Come on. We could use a whole lot more of Olivia actions in our school district.
Yep.
You know, I had a coach tell me one time, it's not what you have, it's what you give that matters. So, great job. Next item will be item number 9. Will be Ms. Turner. You're there.
I'm here.
You're like a ninja.
Okay. Dr. Dunlop, President Allen, and members of the board, I'm here tonight with a great honor and something that's just, to be honest with you, downright cool. The FIRST Robotics team is in its 2nd year here in Broken Arrow Public Schools. And the first year, they knocked it out of the park with being in the top 10 out of over 60 teams and regionals. And this year, they got first place. So we're here today. If you guys will all stand up and come up here along with your coach. This is an amazing group of young people who spend an inordinate amount of time working almost every single day on their robot, along with tactical electronics and safety first. And we have great ties to the community with the engineering program that is here with FIRST Robotics. And if Miss Sally Messenger, where's Miss Messenger? Miss Sally Messenger, who is a first-year coach for this team, has done an amazing job, and I know these kids all love her. So I'm gonna turn it over to her and get out of the way.
Hi, everyone. I can speak to teenagers all day long, but adults are a whole nother story, so sorry, y'all. I want to introduce my team. You met Robert back here. This is Naya, Noah, Jenna, Cameron, Peyton, Jace, Han, Liam, and Daniel. And then one of the most important people that I want to introduce to you today is Joel Ferguson, and he is one of our parents, but he's also one of our volunteer engineers from Flight Safety. My role is administrative. I'm primarily just the teacher organizing the kiddos. We have volunteer engineers primarily from Flight Safety and from Tactical Electronics here in Broken Arrow. And these guys give hundreds of hours to these kiddos. I mean, they just work and work and work with them. And we have varying degrees of robotic talent throughout us. Some of us just joined because we were really interested in robotics and didn't know anything about it. And some of us came with experience from last year. And it's just been an honor for me, but these kids have done so great. And it was a big surprise and a wonderful thing that we received first place this year. And the kids are here to answer any robot questions that you might have today. Does anybody have any robot questions?
And just so everybody knows, we were planning on having the robot here because if you haven't ever seen an FRC robot, they're just the coolest things ever. But we had to wrap it all up for nationals, and you can't unwrap it. So
It has to be
Well, I tell you
locked
what.
up and tagged.
yeah.
What an amazing accomplishment. Going from, this is the 2nd year and y'all are kicking it out of the I mean, that's a cool accomplishment.
They're really good.
Outstanding. That is cool.
Can you give us a little bit more details about nationals?
So the way that the competition as a whole works is a bracket system. So you have teams of teams. You have an alliance of 3 of the teams from your different schools around the state or even the country. For Oklahoma's regional, we have people from Arkansas and Missouri, and one of our alliance members was from Missouri. So the whole system works. You have practice rounds the first day. It's they don't matter. That's just for getting everything in place, make sure everything works well. The second day is your qualifiers, and your qualifiers determine your seat on the rankings. And then if you're in the top 8 seats, you get to pick your alliance. Throughout the whole qualifiers, it's just random. So you pick your alliance. If you make it to the quarterfinals, you work the quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, and then that's it. You've won regionals, and that's what we did. And now the nationals would work the same way. It's the same system, but just winter nationals are there's two different ones. The one in Houston is the 22nd, I believe, and the St. Louis one I'm not sure the date on. It's later in the month, I think.
Well, we want to congratulate you all, and what we want you all to do is go on, further your education, and then come back to Broken Arrow, and probably tactical electronics and flight safety could say the same thing, that we want you to come back and work here in our community and help us grow Broken Arrow. We're so proud of you. It's amazing what you've done, Ms. Messenger, and these young people. It's truly, they give us a proud feeling that we're doing great things in Broken Arrow. And I hope all of you come back here to stay after you finish college. So,
Great job.
thank you.
Okay, we'll just do.
Just you.
I don't.
I know. Making us earn our keep. It's good.
Next item number 10, Mr. Moore.
Good evening. I have the honor to recognize several special guests tonight, the first of which is the Broken Arrow Mayor, Mr. Craig Thurman. Also with us is Fire Chief Mr. Jeremy Moore and Assistant Chief Mr. Mark Stewart. We're going to recognize some special heroes we have within our school district, and we have two instances this year where AEDs were used to save the lives of a student and a staff member. And so we'll start out with the first one, which was on November 28th of 2016. We're doing a weightlifting class. A student collapsed and became unresponsive. Coach Mike Humphrey recognized the emergency and sent for help. Coach Dean Davis soon arrived with the AED, and Coach Humphrey began CPR on the student. As the AED was analyzing and providing electric shocks to the student, school nurse Julia Price arrived to aid in the care of the student until the fire department was able to respond. Without the quick actions of Coach Davis and Coach Humphrey and the guidance of Nurse Price, the student would not have survived this event. I would like to ask Coaches Davis and Humphrey to come forward to be recognized. You gentlemen come up here for some photos.
No, absolutely not.
Appreciate you. Thanks.
Keep that thing handy. My heart's not good either.
Is Nurse Price here as well? Come on up, please. I'm sorry. Someone told me you weren't going to be here.
Yes.
Our next set of heroes on March 7th, 2017, during a baseball game, a staff member began feeling ill and collapsed in the press box at the stadium. Mr. Paul Croft was also in the press box and called for help. Student trainers Chase Holloway and Avery Mize responded and began CPR. Coach Mac Chambers responded with the AED, and Mr. Croft and Mr. Holloway placed the pads on the victim and started the AED. Soon after the first shock was delivered, our athletic trainers Daniel Stewart and Taylor Coatsworth arrived to help until the fire department was able to respond. On another note, at least 10 people in the crowd helped get Coach Green down the stands, which is quite a task, getting people up and down stands without steps. We don't have those names, otherwise we'd recognize them. Once again, the quick actions of our staff and students saved the life of Mr. Roger Green, who is also in attendance tonight. So at this time, I'd like to ask Coach Croft, Chase Holloway, and Daniel Stewart to come up to be recognized. Mr. Green, if you'd like to come up too, that'd be great. Thank you.
Isn't BA a great place? We've got great students and great people and great staff. Whew, I feel good.
And again, I think this just speaks to how our students, our teachers, our staff, you know, we talk about teaching kids and being in the classroom. Ooh, I'm not going to get choked up, but it's things like this that make Broken Arrow such a great place to be, because a lot of people might make the phone call, but to step in and do what it takes to save another person's life, that's huge. And I think that's why we're all so proud of Broken Arrow and proud to be here. So thank you.
Next item, item number 11, Dr. Dunlop.
Ooh, and I just been choked up. Okay, yeah, so this evening, this is another happy, wonderful celebration. So in the past, we've had a couple of different awards awarded to our financial department, and this year, it's like they've gone above and beyond. It's almost like they've done the Triple Crown. So not only, and I know in the board agenda, it states that they won the GFOA certificate, which by the way, stands for Government Finance Officers Association Awards. And the important thing of this, we've won it for the last 4 years, but what a lot of people don't realize is this is all city, municipalities, government entities. So it's not just public school financial accounting. They're competing against everyone who is in any sort of a government type of accounting system. So fantastic work. I'm going to turn it over to Natalie Eniff in just a second. I have more to say though. We also won, not last year did we win it, but we just won it again, the ASBO Award. And that's the Association of School Business Officials. And these are just school districts, but it's an international award. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie Eniff, our Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Dr. Dunlop and Board of Education. It's my great honor to stand in front of you all to be recognized for this award, but really this is a collaborative effort of the entire finance division throughout the entire year. And not just our finance division, the entire district in some way plays a role in us compiling this report and getting the data together for what we need to put out the finished product. We are very, very proud of the final product, the report that goes out to these organizations, because it demonstrates a very high level of financial reporting and information for our public and for our staff and parents to understand exactly where our dollars go, which is critical information, especially in this budget climate. So as I stand up here, I'd like to recognize Kathy Mitchum, our Executive Director of Financial Reporting. She is a very key instrument in doing the majority of the financial reporting. Her technical skills have really put us on the cutting edge of being able to keep up with the pronouncements and the guidelines that are required to publish these reports. Also, our treasurer, Donna Dallahan, is very key in helping us compile and put together the information. But not only is it finance, communications helps us with our district profile, operations, child nutrition, all provide and feed us data for what we need to push out that final report. So it is a collaborative effort. I have the good fortune of standing up here to be recognized, but it is truly a team effort, and without the board's support, it would not be possible. So thank you.
Natalie, congratulations to you and the team. It takes more than one great quarterback to have a good team, so congratulations. Next item will be item 12, Ms. Knight.
Good evening. I get to carry along with the happy vein this evening with the good news. I was approached by an individual in the community, very familiar with the TIGET program, who would like to make a $5,000 anonymous contribution to the TIGET program. And they asked me what the needs were, and together through our conversation, we determined that every once in a while you have an individual who may not be able to fund their part of competition or uniform or whatever that they need. And they decided that that should be earmarked for 8th through 12th grade TIGETs that we deem are in need of financial assistance. So this will help many, many kids in the future.
And Ms. Knight, again, that's one of the wonderful things about being a Broken Arrow, is because anytime a student really wants to participate in any of our activities, we find a way to provide the funding so that they can also participate. So thank you.
Okay, this is an action item, so do we have any discussion?
Make a motion.
Oh, sorry. Second.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Allen? And I'm sorry, there are no voting
Yes.
buttons.
Okay. Next item, item 13, are comments from the public. Seeing as we have none, we'll move on to item 14. Ms. Tiger.
Good evening. I'm not sure it's quite fair to follow all of that. I would have preferred some bad, no, I'm just joking. I honestly, this has not been a real controversial week in the legislative sessions. A lot of things are kind of dropping off and going by the wayside and calming down a little bit. A lot of the bills that don't necessarily make a lot of sense have started to fade away and ease our minds that we're not going to get a lot of mandates, in particularly unfunded mandates for next year. There were some bills worth noting that went through. Number one, obviously, is it was passed on the Senate side now for the teacher pay raise. $1,000 for the first year, $2,000 for the second, and $3,000 for the third year. It will go on to the governor's desk next week. It is by Michael Rogers, and we're very proud of that in Broken Arrow. I know in the news right now we don't have exact funding streams tied to that bill, so there's still concerns of exactly how that will roll out in the future, in particularly when we're in such a revenue shortfall right now that a lot of districts are very worried about what that will look like. But it's a step in the right direction, and we're appreciative of that. A lot of things that passed on the other side, either the House or the Senate, was pretty mundane housekeeping items. I was appreciative that a bill went through that allowed for more retention funds, if possible, to be given to teachers returning in the same district. A lot of times whenever we're looking at bonuses or stipends for teachers, there's usually a big PD requirement attached to that, and with teacher negotiations and limited contract days, sometimes that's very hard. So they kind of freed our hands that in good times of budget that we would be able to give retention bonuses later in the year without tying them to more work. Also, some housekeeping items that happened this week were, how to list your vacant buildings. Right now, they don't have to be on our website. They're asking that those be added to our district websites. Remove the requirement for 2 years of experience within your discipline for the alternative teaching certificate program. They are at least recognizing the shortfall in teachers and trying to make steps for us in regards to recruitment and trying to be creative with getting teachers certified or certified in different areas. That's huge. I know our recruitment team, it's very hard these days to fill a lot of the positions that we have vacant, in particularly when we set up and have neighboring states set up with their booths next to us with their checkbooks open. So however we can make pathways easier for teachers is greatly appreciated. This week the governor did sign a bill that required accredited universities in Oklahoma college teaching preparation to add digital learning to their curriculum, which we're very appreciative of, that teachers can come to us out of college a little bit more prepared for the digital learning environment, as well as it will mandate PD for existing teachers in digital teaching and learning. Next week, things that we are really watching are changes to the A through F, or the proposed changes. It will go next week for bringing to the governor. COSA and many organizations still find this bill controversial because they don't think that a single letter should be attached to a school or a school district. Others find that the changes made through the system are significant enough that it actually is a pretty decent reflection of a school site. So it's kind of across the board on support for that bill. Also, Reading Sufficiency Act, everyone is watching that because there is a sunset provision this year to take off the team approach on that third grade retention, to make sure that there isn't a hard, steady law that forces you to hold a third grader back, that parents and teachers do have the final say, which across the board everyone pretty much agrees the sunset should be removed for that, and we should move on. The last bill that we're really watching for next week anyway is that the Board of Education would be mandated to create a district-wide grading policy. A lot of people find that extremely unnecessary. Most districts have their own grading policy, and a lot of what is being proposed as mandates is very specific language that is controversial. So we'll be watching that one very closely.
I do have a comment. You know, it does concern me that with continual revenue failures that the legislature, obviously we want to do everything we can for our teachers statewide and more importantly for Broken Arrow Public Schools. That is a huge issue. You know, when we talk about recruitment and retention, that is a major issue to our ability to recruit and our ability to maintain our existing staff. And we see continual obviously articles in the newspaper about people transitioning to other states, and I know that's a concern, but I guess what my concern is right now, more importantly, is the false sense that somehow, without identifying future sources of revenue to be applicable to the teacher pay raise, it concerns me for our emotional well-being of our staff members who may think that that is an eventual, that's coming forward, when in reality, if money is not attached, it's not going to happen. So I'm perplexed. I continue to be each and every year that we do not address revenue sources to public education. And I know that Ms. Enoff is going to give us a budget report this evening, and that's going to be instrumental in providing our community much needed information. But as you have opportunity, as I have opportunities, all of us on the board have opportunity, other educational leaders, it's incumbent on all of us to educate our legislative leaders to the absolute trauma they are creating to public schools across this state.
Agreed.
And with that, I won't say anymore.
Ms. Tiger, so I didn't hear you say anything about any revenue bills. So there has not been any revenue bills being proposed. I know they talked about the fuel tax credit, but I haven't seen any come up across our little
No, there would not be any formal bills for that. There's a lot of talk and a lot of discussion. I know, particularly with this teacher raise bill of perhaps a gas tax and things. They're going down different avenues, and I know even some of the oil and gas industry owners themselves are joining the conversation of what that looks like as a fair tax without hurting new businesses wanting to come into Oklahoma, but there's nothing concrete.
Well, like Ms. Kelly said, it is concerning. We're getting close to the end of the session here for too long, and we sure would hate for them to ride out of town without doing anything to help us get out of this crunch. You know, to me, it looks like, I don't know if it's deliberate or incompetent, but when you lower the standards to get a teacher in a classroom, you know, and you fail to fund it, so, and then you want to grade it on the performance of it. So is this a deliberate system that's being created to make us look like we're failures in public education, which we know is not the case? We just don't get the proper support that we need. So it's concerning. I know we had a lot of forums and things going on this last week, and I sure would love to see our community come out in full support and speak to those in Oklahoma City, just like we did in our community, because we had a lot of people at those things. That would make a huge difference, I do believe. So.
Absolutely, and I know tomorrow there's a group of us that will take the chamber bus. We're all headed to Oklahoma City, again, to try to make a difference and move the needle for public education.
I wish you had about 5 buses going down there, because they need to hear from a lot of people, because they're not listening. So, sorry. Any other items? Discussion. Next item, item 15, Ms. Enoff.
Okay, as Ms. Enoff is preparing, I did want to kind of piggyback on what you were talking about with the legislature. We can all agree that we must increase our revenue streams on our funding for public schools, because we are in dire straits. We're going to get to see a little bit of detail on that. Sad thing is we're going to be looking at some scenarios, and we're actually wishing for a 3% cut. That's sad when you wish for a cut, because you know that the possibilities out there looming are much larger than that. And a little soapbox, but if educators and parents and communities would get together and create the same amount of passion But what I say is, let's not fuss at the legislators. Instead, let's provide our support and say, if you will make the difficult decisions, if you will make the tough choices about how to create revenue streams, then we will support you and we will keep you in office. However, if you choose not to make those difficult decisions, then we may choose not to. We, and it's an education entity, have more votes than any other group of people in the entire state, and we can make that change. We've seen it happen before. We have a great example of that in our state superintendent. So instead of yelling and complaining, say we will provide support to you, we'll keep you in office. However, you've got to make the tough choices. So with that, we're going to get our budget report from Ms. Enid.
Thank you. You'll notice that the title of tonight's presentation is Budget Realities 2.0. There is a very, very similar presentation that was given to the board about a year ago, and unfortunately, there's a lot of the same information. Just to kind of go over and remind you all of our initial goals when we set out in looking at the budget. Of course, keep cuts away from the classroom, maintain instructional programs, secure funding for our employee stipend, which is a huge benefit and gift to our employees to show them that they're appreciated and valued as educational professionals. And finally, protect the fund balance. Some recent developments. Really, this is a very critical time in the legislative session. We've had a lot of activity the past couple months as the State Board of Equalization has met in February, and from that meeting, they declared a general revenue failure, which occurs anytime actual collections dip below that 5% mark. So as such, there is a 0.7% cut across all state agencies. $11.1 million was the hit Common Education took from that general revenue failure. Additionally, the Education Reform Revolving Fund, better known as 1017, is grossly under collecting to the tune of about $39 million. And once again, the state legislature has failed to meet their April 1st deadline of providing education a budget by April 1st. That puts us in a very precarious situation for having to make staffing decisions, get out employment contracts by our deadline. So as an accountant, this is very difficult for me to deal in conjecture and not in black and white fact. But unfortunately, that is the position that we are in, and we will make the best decisions going forward with the information that we have. Wanted to give you kind of an overview of the funding factor throughout the years. What's interesting about this is you can see not only has that funding factor decreased dramatically from 2008, but when you run the numbers, the percentage that the state is contributing has continued to decrease. So if you look at 2009, which is the highest year we were funded, the state was kicking in about 60% at that figure. Today, it's 51%. So that not only tells you that the factor is decreasing, but the amount that the local taxpayer burden has gone up dramatically. And I think that's a very telling fact that is sometimes lost in translation. The other interesting point is, as Broken Arrow has been a very growing district and we have increased in our student population, in 2009, we were at about just a little over 16,000 students. Today, in 2017, just over 19,000 students. We are losing funding when they say they are holding education harmless. We are losing that funding on our added population. If we were funded to the level that we were funded in 2009, that's a $7.7 million decrease. $7.7 million. So what have we actually been cut to date? Throughout the second semester of this year, I've been reporting to the board of some cash shortfalls in our state aid and reduction in our overall funding factor. So I wanted to kind of clarify that our total loss to date is that $1.2 million. That was adjusted through the weighted ADM figure of $3,008. So they basically completely redid the formula to get us to that number. In addition to that, our March state aid payment was reduced to bring us to that $1.6 million. There is a little bit of confusion that the January and February cash shortfalls were in addition to the overhaul of the funding formula, but basically what they did is they wrapped all that up into that first line item and then tacked on the March shortfall after that. So that brings us to about $1.7 million loss this year. Anticipated cuts through the rest of the year. Again, this is conjecture and based upon what we're hearing from OSSBA, COSA, some of the legislation that's going through. We're anticipating about a $250,000 reduction to our final through state aid payments. So that would mean our final cut for this year loss would be about $2.4 million. So how does that impact our fund balance? You can see that $13.1 million is what we ended with at the end of 15-16. With our loss in 16-17, that brings us to about $10.7 million. $10.7 million sounds like a lot of money, but to put that in perspective, one certified payroll for Broken Arrow Public Schools is about $6.5 million. We depend heavily on our fund balance to get us started at the beginning of the year because just like the state, we receive our large sources of revenue coming in at different points in the year. So it is crucial for us to budget and have an accurate cash flow projection for when we have to start making payroll in the beginning of July. $10.7 million is about roughly 215 teachers if that were taken away from us. 215 teachers that we would have to essentially let go, make some very, very difficult decisions. So when we get written up in the paper about schools having an excess in fund balance, it's very important that we put this in perspective for the size of our district, for our needs to continue operating and serving our students. Wanted to kind of revisit what we did last year. Everything in red that I've highlighted are actual cuts that the district realized. So you can see everything from the employee stipend percentage was reduced, class sizes were increased, instructional programs were cut, STEM, gifted. We're looking at reducing utility costs through our partnership with Synergistic, staff travel, textbooks, transportation, printing, field trips. It's quite an extensive list of things that were actually cut during last year. Future cuts to be determined. Again, this aligns with our initial goals of trying to keep cuts away from the classroom, but at some point that becomes very difficult because it's very much a trickle-down effect, and at some point there's just not a lot left to cut. So I wanted to kind of run through some different scenarios with you of right now we don't have a definite percentage of what the district will be cut going into 17-18. So if you look at a 10% cut, that's about a $4.6 million in our reduction to state aid. Additionally, we're opening Timber Ridge next year, so we will have some added staff costs as we have to add all those ancillary services that are needed when you open up a new building. An administrator, a nurse, a counselor, a librarian, all of those services. So a 10% cut to us would be a total of $5.6 million. You go to 5%, $2.3 million, Timber Ridge staffing for a total of $3.3. 3% cut, about $1.4, $1 million of staffing, $2.4 million. Like Dr. Dunlop said, it's a very, it's not a great feeling when you're hoping that you're only cut 3%. One of the things that we continually get hammered on in the media and by some of our critics is what we actually spend on instruction. you can see a large area of our budget is coded to what we call Function 1000, the instructional function. But there are so many other areas, functions, that are critical to making our school district a success. Our nurses, our counselors, media, our bus drivers, our custodians, all of those ancillary functions that aren't deemed necessarily direct classroom instruction are critical to the success of our buildings and our district. And so when you look at that 63%, yes, that is a very important aspect of our budget, but all of those other blocks are very, very important. So this is kind of what we have done this year. We have saved a little bit on fuel costs. We've already eliminated 3 administrator positions, 1 support staff, and the majority of the difference for 16-17 is coming from our fund balance. Potential areas for reduction that we've been discussing. Not choosing to give the employee stipend, absorbing administrator positions, regular teaching and support staff positions, continuing to look at travel as an area of reduction, department budgets, and continued savings through our energy management conservation. Last year we did a community survey to get feedback, and you can see that most of the feedback we got were from parents, and just so you can kind of revisit their priorities of what they thought were important topics. Staff travel, utility costs, printing, and we have, like I said, implemented many of these cost savings reductions going into this school year. So it is getting very, very, it's getting very difficult to figure out what else can be cut. So I would answer any questions that you have.
Ms. Enoff, I really appreciate the opportunity to have this report, and certainly I think it's commendable to have this information out to our public as well. I do have a couple of questions, or several questions actually. I know that you cannot prognosticate, I realize that, but yet with a revenue failure over the last, well, we've had 3 so far, correct?
Correct.
So, you know, trying to plan ahead with that in mind, and realizing that we may have another revenue failure next year, it's kind of a very tenuous position to be put in if you're the CFO in Broken Arrow Public Schools. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. The other question I have is, and you did a very good job of talking about the different services, the different, with the pie chart, the various things that we expend dollars on. And of course, instruction being a big piece of that. But yet at the same time, we do hear from our legislative leaders that we spend in the state too much on administrative services. So I thought too, it might be good that you explain on other services and administrative services what those may entail, so that our general public is aware and can have a greater understanding.
Sure. We pay great attention to our administrative cost. Our cap is 5%. Broken Arrow has always been well below that, usually in the 3.5 ballpark. Administrative costs are obviously a necessary evil. We have to have administrators to run our programs and to oversee the day-to-day functions of our business, basically. That is part of our maintenance of effort, end of year reporting that Ms. Mitchum and I work on very closely in tandem. And like I said, our costs, our cap is 5%, and we have always been below that cap. We are cognizant anytime we add any type of administrative position in the district that is vetted through leadership, and we're very cognizant of that cap.
Another question that I have is, you know, and you've done a great job in showing the per pupil expenditure, the amount of monies that we receive from the state. Since 2008, you've demonstrated how much we've lost, but at the same time, I think it's really difficult at times when you talk from year to year how much the district, Broken Arrow Public Schools, has lost since 2008. And if I recall correctly, Ms. Enoff, I think you did share a percentage from 2008 till present, a loss that the district's received, and you correct me if I'm wrong, was that around 26.7%?
That's correct. If you were also just looking at straight dollars, if we were funded at 2009 to our student population today, our weighted ADM number, that's the $7.7 million loss in funding.
Okay, and also through our surveys and information that we obtain from our parents, and they're critical to their children's education. And our teachers, too, have expressed a desire to ensure that class sizes are protected as much as we can, which that's a critical component of doing what we're responsible to do. But it does become harder as a school district, doesn't it, with the continued cuts and the continued unsurety from the state of Oklahoma as it relates to our budget to do that, correct?
That is correct. And as I stated at the beginning of the presentation, some of this information is based on conjecture and estimate. And it is, it's a very difficult position to be in when you're dealing with people's livelihoods. And obviously we want to do the very best thing for our teachers and our students, but we also have to do the responsible and conservative thing of making sure that, frankly, we're going to have enough money to be able to open a new school next year and start the 17-18 school year with a healthy fund balance to meet our obligations.
And you were saying a moment ago that in 2008 we were funded at 59% from the state, and today we're at 51%. Is that correct?
60%.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And the reason I ask that is we have become a school district that is more, in other words, more of an emphasis for the full funding, for the funding necessary has become incumbent upon local sources of revenue. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, it's mainly realized through our ad valorem tax dollars. And so obviously, yes, that directly impacts our community and patrons.
Would you say that if we were not, as a district, passing bond issues right now, that we would be in a much different place?
I can't even really begin to imagine if we didn't have our bond dollars. We would be back in portables. The equity that the district has worked to create the past 10 years would be gone because we would not be able to keep up with our student growth and the needs of our district. You know, I've never been one to try and be an alarmist or paint an unrealistic picture, but this year more than ever, it's very, very clear that some of the decisions that our legislators are making are not in the best interest of our children.
I appreciate those answers. Thank you.
Ms. Enoff, with what you said, not being an alarmist, but just to answer a question, I guess. You said at 3%, it's around $3.5 million cut to us in reduction. Mm-hmm. And we have $10 million in our carryover, and our monthly certified staff is around $6.5 million of payroll. What happens if we get those 3% cuts in 2 years? What happens to our school? I mean, what do we do?
You know, some of our neighboring districts, unfortunately, are not in the same financial situation as we are, and I'm not really quite sure how they're going to continue making their payroll and other financial obligations. I mean, that is the very reason we have our fund balance. We have our fund balance because, as you know, when I report to the board, we get our big ad valorem collection in January. Well, we have to continue to survive from July to January based on what we carry over from year to year. Our state aid payments typically don't start coming in until August, so just like the state, we are charged with looking at our revenue, forecasting it appropriately to meet our cash obligations.
And I heard Dr. Gist at Tulsa Public Schools give her speech on the state of their district. And I think even though we're in a pretty good financial position, we might be facing the same situation she is. If you talk about a $3 million cut over 3 years, we wouldn't have no money left. Is that correct?
That's correct. And TPS is, of course, facing a little bit of different climate with
Sure.
declining enrollment. And with our added students, the dollars do follow anytime we add kiddos to the classroom. But, it's all a thing of, how the formula is going to, how they adjust the formula to deal with those added students.
I have one other point. It does become very difficult if and the fund balance is for things that are unforeseen. So we're seeing the unforeseen every year. So it really does become difficult from the standpoint of trying to budget. So again, I appreciate all your answers. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda will be the consent agenda minus items 39 and 50. Any discussion?
Move the consent agenda items 16 through 81, with the exception of 39 and 50.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Will you please call the roll?
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item 82, Mr. Tolomeo, be the construction update.
Well, good evening, everybody. How are you guys? Good. I'm here to present a little bit more fun stuff on construction. We have quite a few projects going. We have Sequoia, Timber Ridge, Freshman Academy, and the high school out. And then we bid a couple more last month, which I'm going to focus on these 3 projects right here. Out at Sequoia, the blue and green area are ones we've completed, and the red's the one we've taken over. This is a rendering and what we look like today. And that's the area we occupied last month. And then this is the old cafeteria, which we're turning into the media center. Out at Timber Ridge, we have the rendering, the floor plan, and that's kind of where we were a couple days ago. Freshman Academy, we haven't really started out there yet. We've executed some contracts, and we will start with some road work and some earth work where we align First Street with across the street. We'll start that beginning part of next month. Floor plan, first floor, second floor. Kirkland Activity Complex. This is a project we bid, and I'm seeking your approval tonight. We have quite a bit going on out here. Bids came in really, really good, and it will include 2 turf fields. And you can see a site plan here. You have the auditorium and gym. You can kind of see the outline of those 2. And then we'll have the 2 turf fields. And then we'll renovate the auditorium, deal with some fire damage out there, and make that site look really nice. Out at the high school, we are hot and heavy on the 11 classrooms, eating area out there. And this is the entryway when you come in from that south lot. You can see that entry element coming into play right there on the right side. And that will be occupied in November. This is another project I'm seeking your approval tonight. This is the site plan for the new parking lots out at the high school. We've addressed a lot of the issues, aligned a lot of the drives. If you go in on that south side, you kind of have to jog to get into the parking lot. We're straightening that out so we can create some 4-way stops. We're aligning the roads that are south of the field house and the south parking lot so we can create another 4-way stop, doing some additional loops and drives, and some additional lighting back there as well. And then the big part of this is actually we'll have some drainage in this back parking lot, which will prolong the life of the asphalt, and hopefully we can get 20 more years out of this asphalt. Then we have an entry element into baseball, softball. This is another GMP I'm seeking approval for, and this is to we have some wayfinding issues out here, so this is to mark that entry point into baseball and softball. Out at the Performing Arts Center, this is the last project of the 2009 bond issue, so I'm really excited to get this one done and that bond issue closed out. It will include an addition out on the west side, and you can see that on the left side of the screen, and it is flexible practice space, flexible dressing rooms, and it can either be one really large room or 7 rooms. It has folding partition walls, and it'll be really nice. It's what this site needs to function as a performing arts center. And then we're moving the ticket booth to the north side. We're doing some display cases and making that a little bit more logical, and you can see what that'll look like right here in this rendering. We obviously have a lot of things of value that Ms. Chenoweth has donated to us, so we need to secure those a little bit better and display those a little bit better. So that's our goal here. And then with that, moving the ticket booth, we'll be able to create a more appropriate reception area right there next to the front reception desk. And then my little icon.
I have a couple of questions. Regarding security at North Intermediate High School, I know at some point we cut all the lines because we had to prepare to demolition the area. So when would security be up and online there at that site, or is it currently?
It is not currently. The auditorium actually doesn't have power right now. So some of our first things is to get that auditorium back up and running, and then I believe tonight you're also approving a DMARC for the Cox feed to come in.
Okay, thank you. And then also I had a question. I took a drive and went back behind Sequoia because I had not seen that, and I noticed there was some different product on the facility itself, some rock. So I was wondering, is that a natural rock or is that a man-made rock? I just thought it was kind of interesting on the Sequoia building in the back.
Okay, are you talking about right where that BA is?
Yeah.
Those are actually precast tilt panels. Okay. That's what gives it its safe room rating.
Okay.
They are actually, at the thinnest spot, they're 12 inches thick.
Okay.
So they are rather large. And yeah, it's just an architectural filling, if you will, to that.
It's not a problem. I just was interested to see that was unique.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. We figured it was better than just a giant gray wall.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, next item, 83, Mr. Tolomeo.
83 is to approve the guaranteed maximum price for the south parking lot.
Discussion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Item 84.
Item 84 is the baseball softball entry guaranteed maximum price.
Discussion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Item 85, Mr. Tolomeo.
Item 85 is the Kirkland GMP. It also accepts some alternates for 2 turf fields.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Item 86, Mr. Blackburn.
Good evening, Dr. Dunlop and Board of Education. We'll bring you tonight for your approval The discussion, motion, vote, and bids submitted by the lowest responsible bidders, Summit Bus, providing 2 2017 77-passenger conventional school buses, and Midwest Bus Sales, providing 2 2017 14-passenger Type A buses with lifts. All bidding was conducted pursuant to Oklahoma Competitive Bid Act. Total cost of the district is $309,576 and will be paid from 2009 bond funds.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Item 87, Mr. Moore.
Good evening. The next three items deal with summer projects. The first of which is asking your approval for carpet for Arrowhead Elementary School for 18 classrooms in the amount of $57,080 to be paid from maintenance bond funds.
Discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Item 88, Mr. Moore.
The next one is for 11 HVAC replacement units and to rebuild 4 larger units on the field house at the high school. This is in the amount of $298,400 to Airco Services, and payment will come from maintenance bond funds.
Any discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Item 89, Mr. Moore.
This is to replace 6 HVAC units at Central on Main in the amount of $54,995 to Custom Services with payment from the maintenance bond funds.
Discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Thank you. Next item, number 90, Ms. Bergwall.
Good evening. President Allen, Dr. Dunlap, members of the board. The first thing I'd like to talk to you tonight is about a slight boundary change that I would like to make. I made the unfortunate decision to make a little offhanded comment the last time we were in long-range planning as we talked about Section 413. As you know, we had some patrons that were concerned over Section 518 that we moved from the Oak Crest boundaries to roads. And so we did some accommodations there for those students that had been moved previously. And the offhand comment I made to long-range planning was, they asked, should we move this section into roads? And I said, no, it's an industrial section. We'll never have any kids in there. Well, guess what? We've got a neighborhood going in, and it is in the Oak Crest boundaries. And they will be starter homes, which we get more children out of starter homes than we do even out of apartments. And as you see, they are currently in the roads boundaries. And there are not any students that live in those boundaries now that attend our schools. So I think this is a great time to change those boundaries before those houses are occupied. There's already 3 houses going up. One's their model home, but there's 2 others that are already going up in that neighborhood. And so I would like to propose to make that change to move Section 413 from the roads boundaries to the Oak Crest boundaries, and then that would change the feeder schools as well.
Any discussion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Item number 91, Ms. Bergwall.
The next item I'd like to discuss with you tonight, Ms. Dotson is here to support me. She has a wonderful PTA, and between her bond funds and her PTA, she's going to, or they would like to purchase bleachers for their gym. I believe it's 5 rows of bleachers. She's worked with Mr. Blackburn in our maintenance department and made sure everything's going to fit, and it took us a little while to find a vendor, and then she was still a little out of budget, so her PTA stepped up and offered the rest of that money, so we'd like you to accept that donation tonight.
All right. Discussion. Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Go ahead.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes, congratulations. New bleachers.
Oh, yeah.
Good deal.
And see, that's why I wanted her to come. Mr. Smith also had a donation from his PTA, but he didn't want to come tonight. So he was on this consent agenda, but his PTA gets some credit too for some playground equipment. We can do that. I think we could do that. So.
Must be present to receive. There you go. All right, number 92, Ms. Bergwall.
Okay, this is, as Mr. Tolomeo said earlier in his construction update, the PAC renovations is the last project of the 2009 bond issue, and he and I are both very excited about getting them underway. Mr. Blackburn is helping me with this one, taking it through programming. We're trying to offload a little bit from Mr. Tolomeo, and we were thrilled to see that the bids came in really good. We've always known or been told by our construction managers, I see Flintco there in the audience, that if we get the bids out on the street early, like before spring break, you're going to see better prices because you're going to be ahead of the other schools that we all pass bond issues and all have projects out there. And we really saw that in this project here. We're excited to be able to ask you to accept the alternates, which the alternate that will help us fix those silver swoops. And yes, that's a technical term, swoop, in the lobby area where the laminate is coming apart. So we would like to accept that alternate. And then I think we'll be able to buy some equipment for Mr. Fry, maybe a grand piano, and some seating in the auditorium that will fix some of his clearance issues that he has. So we'll be looking at doing those items down the road as well. Okay.
Did you say those were 2009 bond? I'm a little confused.
Yes, this is the last construction project in the
Is this
2009.
number 92?
Yes, ma'am.
It looks like we have that wrong on the memo.
Doesn't
there.
it say payments
Says
would need from
15.
2015?
So I'd like to make that correction to just bond funds.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
It will be the 09 bond fund, correct? Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Miss Kelly,
Yes.
and Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item, item 93. Dr. Coates. Oh, Mr. Officer, how are you?
Yeah, she's better looking, but I got drawn the short straw. Good evening, Dr. Dunlop and members of the board. This presentation is a result of an accreditation requirement. Each year we need to present our dropout report as well as our remediation report. It's important to note that these reports come straight from other agencies. The dropout report comes from the State Department in response to the quarterly dropout reports that each principal submits. The remediation report comes straight from the regents. So just fulfilling that accreditation requirement. Any questions?
Okay. Are we have a report to review or?
It's on your agenda.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Student Services, number 94, Mr. Perry.
Good evening. This is just an information item only, and just want to make everyone aware that our snow day back on January.
Just a second. Was that last one an action item?
No.
Nope, just a presentation of the awards, of the
No, it wasn't
On
reports.
number 93, well, then it said action over on the side.
It is.
So I'm just curious,
It is action.
before you, sorry to interrupt you,
What
Chuck.
is,
No, you're fine.
what is the action?
That we accept the report? What?
The way it's written doesn't,
It was not an action item.
It wasn't? Okay.
So it should say.
So that's just an error on the side.
should be info only.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Perry.
All right. January 6th, we had a snow day, and just wanted to make everyone and remind everyone that our contingency calendar on our 16-17 calendar knocks that last day of school to Monday, May 22nd. So we get to come back for one more day to finish out the school year. So I just want to make everyone aware. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next item, number 95, Mr. Ellett.
President Allen, Board, Dr. Dunlop. Kind of seems appropriate that this is that I'd be bringing tonight after our accolades we had earlier in the evening with the heroes that we were dealing with. But Who We Play For is an organization out of Texas that their mission is to reduce the incident of sudden cardiac death in teens and young adults by providing affordable cardiac screening and increased awareness. When you talk about heart attacks that older people have, you're dealing with where blood vessels or arteries are being clogged up, and it's the heart doesn't stop beating. The sudden cardiac arrest that we're talking about happens in young people, and basically for people who normally look healthy, everything about them is healthy, all the signs are healthy, but their heart stops beating, and that's a sudden cardiac arrest that we are talking about. This organization that I'm talking about, Who We Play For, is out of Texas, and they would come into Broken Arrow. We would publicize to our kids and our parents that for $15 you could get a echocardiogram, which is a test that they use. And for example, when you go to a doctor's office and they do a normal physical, they will put a stethoscope on your heart and they will listen. They'll have a cardiac specialist listen to you. When they do that, they are able to determine about 1% of the abnormalities we are looking for when you're testing or listening to the heart. If you add an echocardiogram to that, which only takes about 2 to 5 minutes, that percentage goes up to 94% of what they could be looking for. We feel like we as an athletic department want to be proactive in this. It would not cost it would cost our students $15, but if you were to go into a normal doctor's office and get this test, you're looking at probably between $100 and $200 minimum to get that test in a doctor's office. They come in and they also have a scholarship program, so if we have a student that wants to do it but can't afford to do it, they have a scholarship program to do it, and they are able to do this because they have cardiac specialists. They've done it for years. They've built up the equipment. They will come in with a whole task force, and they'll spend the entire week if they need to get the number of kids that they want, as many kids as we possibly can get to say, hey, we want to go ahead and go through this test. And we just think it's a proactive approach that we need to do. And normally out of the folks that they would do, if they do 100 athletes, let's say, about 4% of those, they're going to find something that they will say, you need to get another look at it, a little further look. And then of that 4%, you cut that down to another 2% that really have anything they have to deal with. They're just making sure. But I would ask that you consider approving this contract for tonight for us to be able to do that.
Mr. Elliott, is this mandatory in Texas now?
No, but Texas is starting to do a lot of it. This organization is out of Frisco, Texas, and they do a lot of schools there, and they are truly committed to getting out to schools and helping find these cases. We've had we have two people, a student and an adult, that are walking the planet because of what has happened at Broken Arrow schools this year. Hopefully we won't have any more for a long time, but this is an effort to help cut that from ever happening again as well.
Thank you. Discussion?
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Thank you. Next item, number 96, Ms. Enoff.
Good evening again. I don't really want to belabor this point since we just really went through a full presentation on the overall budget, but just wanted to share with you real quickly where we stood at the end of March. So you can really see in state aid the decline from the reduction in our funding factor. Ad valorem is a bright spot for the district as we have continued to collect more than what we have received in past years due to higher valuations. And our state sources, we're really receiving very few state sources to this point, mainly just in the area of our flex benefit allowance. Textbooks, professional development, ACE, have all been cut from the state budget. Building fund, again, our ad valorem is the main source of revenue that drives this fund. And our child nutrition collections remain very strong because we have a very well-run child nutrition department. General fund, really our expenditures are on target with where they need to be. You can see some of the efforts and our cuts and reduction from 15-17 that have carried us into 16-17. And building fund, we shifted some salaries to our building fund to alleviate pressure from our general fund, so that's why you see the added costs there. And child nutrition, again, is very much on target with where they need to be as far as their revenue collections. So I would just answer any other questions that you have about the budget or where we are to date.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay, my next item is to ask for the general fund operating budget to be increased by $230,435. This stems from a very old workers' compensation case. We have been doing this through our reinsurer, and they have finally taken the case to mediation and reached a final settlement. But in a case such as this, the reinsurer cannot pay the claimant directly. That must come through us. And so we are paying the claim in terms of the mediation agreement, but we will be reimbursed by the reinsurer within 10 to 14 days. So really there is a zero effect cash-wise, but appropriation-wise, I am asking for an increase in that amount.
Questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes, I'm having a problem. My voting button's not coming out.
It's showing that it's up. I have your vote manually. Would you like me to keep that?
Next item, number 98.
My next item is to ask the board to approve the application for temporary appropriations. This is brought before the board annually so we can get our legal budget established July 1 before the estimate of needs is completed and before the operating budget is presented to the board in October.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Allen?
Yes. Still not working. You may have to just record
Can you
mine.
hit the sync button?
There's no joint meeting.
It's not.
We'll have a few more, so just do it manually.
Okay.
Next item, number 99.
All right, my last item is to ask the board to authorize the district to enter the negotiation process with the Broken Arrow Education Association. We received the formal letter from Ms. Cook, who is their chief negotiator, to enter into those discussions for the 17-18 school year. So I'd ask the board to authorize me to start these discussions.
Any questions? Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item, 100. Ms. Dolhan.
Good evening, President Allen, Dr. Dunlop, members of the board. I'm here to give the treasurer's report as of the end of March. The cash balances report shows a total of $51,953,000 in assets for the district. Included in this total is our investments that total $38,190,000. Our fund security and deposit report shows a total of $40,818,000 in collateral pledged to the district. Our deposits that require collateral total $24,666,000, leaving an available balance of collateral in the amount of $16,152,000.
All right, any questions? All right, next item.
In our activity funds, receipts at the end of March total $5,813,000. Disbursements total $4,947,000, leaving a balance in the activity funds of $3,213,000.
Questions? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Next item, Ms. Metavalis.
Good evening. My first item tonight is the change order report. And we have change orders for this period of time, March 2nd through April 5th, reflecting a decrease of $186,378.71. I said the number right.
Discussion or questions?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, 103, Ms. Metavalis.
Next item is the encumbrance report across all funds from March 2nd to April 6th. I'm asking you to approve tonight encumbrances totaling $2,444,179.91.
Discussion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, 104, Ms. Metavalis.
My last item is, we do this every year. It gets time to purchase copy paper for the next year. And I bid that. The lowest responsible bidder was Contract Paper Group, reflecting a $21.93 per case price. This equates to $92,106, which represents 5 semi-trucks.
Discussion.
A lot of paper.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
That is a lot of paper.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item will be new business, seeing how we have none. Item 106 will be to move into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move into executive session. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
And Mr. Allen?
Yes, thank you.